Okay, guys, here's our last video for the Unit 1 review packet. Okay, distance and midpoint, that's topic 3. So these are a little out of order. 3B and 3C have to do with midpoint, 3A has to do with distance. Now remember, you should be memorizing these formulas. They're not something given on the SOL, so we need to memorize them, okay? Okay, 3B, find the midpoint for the segment with the following endpoints. So we want to find the midpoint. Our formula for midpoint is x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Just like my points have an x and a y part, an x and a y part, or an x and y coordinate, my midpoint has to have an x and a y coordinate. That's why there's this comma, so we have two numbers at the end. Okay, let's fill in what we know. This is my first coordinate, so this is the x of the first coordinate, y of my first coordinate. X of my second point, y of my second point. Okay, so now we can fill these in. X1 and X2 or 5 and 8. So I'm really just taking the two X's and averaging them. Y1, Y2, Y1, Y2. I'm taking the two Y's, I'm averaging them. 5 plus 8 is 13. 13 is not divisible by 2. Negative 2 plus 6 is 4. 4 is divisible by 2. So you have two options. You can leave it like this as a fraction, or if you want to leave it as a decimal, you could leave it like this. All I'm going to ask is that you be really careful when you plug things into your calculator. See this 5 plus 8 here? If I type in 5 plus 8 divided by 2, the calculator thinks I'm just dividing the 8 by 2. Remember, our answer was supposed to be 6.5 for this first part. Watch what happens when I push enter. Right? So if you're going to type it straight from here in your calculator, you either need to put the top in parentheses and then divide by 2, or you have to add them first, push enter, and then divide by 2. So please just be really careful when you use your calculator. So check, maybe do it yourself and then use it to check, something like that. So these are, you can have either answer. We don't care if you have a fraction or a decimal. Wait, now it says one endpoint of a segment has coordinates 7, negative 2. The midpoint of the segment is 1, 3. Find the coordinates of the other endpoint. So I'm going to draw a picture real fast. Okay. One endpoint is at 7, negative 2. Okay. The midpoint is at 1, 3. I think you guys would agree with me if the first endpoint's here, the midpoint's here, we're going to have to keep going somewhere up here to get the next endpoint, right? We go this way and then we're going to keep going. I think you would also agree with me, whatever I have to do to get to the midpoint is from here is the same thing I have to do to get there. So in this case, you'll notice I have to go backwards a certain amount and then up a certain amount to get here. So to get to my next endpoint, I'm going to have to go backwards a certain amount and then up a certain amount. So we use our method called line it up to figure out what that over and up is. So I have my first endpoint, my midpoint, and we want to find the new endpoint. The first endpoint was 7, negative 2. The midpoint was 1, 3. We want to find our new endpoint. So to get from 7 to 1, I have to subtract 6. I had to go backwards 6. So we're going to have to go backwards 6 again to get to my new endpoint. So 1 minus 6 is going to get us to a negative 5. Okay, to get from negative 2 to 3, I have to go up 5. So I'm going to have to go up 5 again to the next to get to the next endpoint. So that plus 5 is going to get me to 8. So that's my new endpoint. Backwards 5, up 8. And that makes sense based on our picture. Okay, the last thing that we need to be able to do is the distance formula. So it says find the distance between these 2 points. So let's start by writing out our distance formula. Figure out what our x's and y's are. So this is my x of my first point, y of my first point, x of my second point, y of my second point. So I subtract the x's. So 1 minus a minus. Be careful with those negatives. Remember, subtracting in between. So I'm subtracting a negative. 12 minus 4. So that's going to give me 1 plus 5, which is 6. 12 minus 4, which is 8. 6 squared is 36. 8 squared is 64. Ooh, look at that. What's the square root of 100? It's 10. Now remember, if depending on your teacher, you might be doing how you round a little differently. You're simplifying radicals or what, but if you're in my class, Mrs. Barnes' class or Mr. Powell's class, make sure when you take the square, if you did get a decimal, you're rounding to the tenths place. But this was a whole number, so we're good. So that's the end of the review packet. I hope you guys are feeling well, and we hope you do fantastic on the test, okay?